Hello and welcome to Monday with Mandy. My name is Mandy Theis with the School of Atelier Arts. And today we are going to do a painting study of these florals behind me. So welcome everybody. Please let me know where you are coming in from today. And we are just going to jump right into it. So we usually have an hour during these Monday demonstrations every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. I give a painting demonstration. And, this is a very complex subject that we have today. So I've put the picture up on the upper right here. But, there's a lot of flowers going on, and we have a relatively short amount of time. So, what we're going to do is we are going to do what's called a study of these flowers. So, we're going to be painting quickly. We aren't going to be getting into all the details, but we are trying to create the feeling of this bouquet, get our color notes in place, get the drawing and the proportion kind of set. And that way we have a great study to take into a more finished painting if that's what we choose to do. Um, so painting flowers is a little tricky. One is that flowers are living, breathing things, and they move throughout the day. They'll chase your light throughout the day. So you have to, at some point, decide where your flowers are and accept that, unlike other still lifes that you might paint or draw, that there's going to be some motion, some movement, and that they're going to change. So what I like to do when I paint flowers is I kind of block all of them in, and then one at a time I tighten them, and that way they're in one position and I just take that whole flower to a finish once I have it kind of blocked in. There's lots of different methods for painting flowers. We'll talk about a few of them throughout today's demo. But again, today is going to be a study. We're not going to do a fully finished painting. We're going to lock in our shapes, values, proportions, colors, etc. Okay. Well, so glad to have all of you here today. What I'm going to do is, as always, it's always a challenge to make sure that you guys can see and I can stand in my spot, but I'm going to pull you guys in a little closer here. Um, and hopefully you can see the side by side. I put the little picture on the upper right because that is the view that's most close aligned with how I'm seeing it. So I can't have the camera and my eye in the exact same place at the exact same time. And I'm trying this out today as a way to help you guys see from the angle that I'm seeing it so that you understand some of the decisions I'm making, while also, being able to see the live action situation going on here. All right. This setup is a little bit different. Today, we have a live object instead of a master copy. We have a 3D object that we have to translate into 2D. Um, excuse me. And we have a moving object like we were discussing earlier. So it's really a challenge to, make sure that we're getting all of these things in together all at the same time. But I'm up for it, and I hope you are up for it too. All right, so I'm just gonna grab my materials, my brush, etc. So my palette today is a little different. Just to talk about my materials, I love a small light palette. I have really weak wrists or something. I don't know, but it really hurts to hold a heavier palette for me. So I love these like super thin, super tiny palettes. I do have a list, oil painting materials list that I just made on the schoolofatelierarts.com. If you go to School of Atelier Arts and type in material list, you'll be able to find it easily there. But all right, so I have this thin palette and I have a different color setup than I normally do. Today I'm using lead white. I love lead white. It's my favorite white. Often when I'm teaching, I use titanium white because, I don't want to be responsible for telling my students to use lead. But since this is just a little demo, not one that my students are going to recreate exactly this way at home, I'm going to use my favorite white. A cad yellow. I did put a yellow ochre on today. The yellow ochre is both warmer and more neutral than my lemon yellow. Now, I could turn this lemon yellow into something that looks like this yellow ochre by neutralizing it, darkening it, and warming it up. But, it's just easier. It's a cheater thing to do. I have a cad red, and I also added alizarin. We have some kind of pinks and reds in here. So I wanted to add that as well. A green, a blue, and a black. So this Viridian green, ultramarine blue, ivory black. I'm just realizing I didn't add any orange. And even though these flowers look pink, there's actually quite a bit of orange in there. So I'm debating whether I want to add that to my palette, something to think about. Um, Okay. Now I've been dabbling with the idea of adding a pink, like a quinacridone pink would be really nice. These roses, although they're a softer pastel, they actually do have some strong chroma notes in it. So I'm going to paint it with this palette. And if I feel like I'm not getting the color punch that I want, I'll go add my quinacridone. Um, Honestly, I recently moved and I have my basic palette out, and my quinacridone is very buried right now in a box. So I'm going to have to dig that out if I feel like I really, really need it. But I think we might be okay with this. We'll find out together. It's really important to understand what the limitations of your pigments may or may not be. So, you can make a pink out of any red, but can you get a pink that's as intense as what we see before us? That is yet to be seen. Oftentimes, the answer is no. In fact, with a lot of floral colors, we actually don't have a pigment that matches them. So you just have to get as close as you can. Sometimes students get really frustrated trying to mix a color that's really, really chromatic, and they don't realize that you can't mix anything that's more chromatic than what's on your palette. You have to find a pigment, and our pigments are more limited than what our eyes can see. Our eyes can see way more intensely colored things than our palette, than the pigments we currently have. Okay, that's a lot of esoteric stuff. I just want to get into the painting situation as quickly as possible. Um, so, all right. All right, so we want to be careful thinkers about what we're up to and how we approach our painting. Um, and I see some good mornings in the chat. Good morning, Ellen. Great to have you from Pennsylvania. All right. It can be really, really intimidating when you are looking at a blank canvas and you're trying to put something this complicated onto your canvas, right? And so we want to be taking big ideas and going to small ideas. And one of the big ideas is the overall shape. Students make the mistake of attacking it. They're like, oh, here's a little flower and here's a little flower. And they don't think about how everything relates to the whole. So, if you are looking at that little picture in the upper right that is more closely aligned with my view of this florals, you can see that it's making kind of a diamond shape, right? So we have kind of up here, across there, down, like the flowers themselves are making a nice diamond shape. So that's our big idea. That's the big idea of this composition. Some other big ideas might be the ground plane where it meets the back plane, and maybe also where the ground plane is meeting the front plane here. Okay, so I'm just going to tilt you guys down a touch. All right, so you guys can really see. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use kind of a neutralized yellow ochre with a little bit of black in it to darken it, and that's going to be my drawing color. You can, when you're drawing, use a little bit of thinner. The only time I ever add anything to my paint is when I'm drawing. And so I use just a tiny drop of Gamsol to thin my paint for drawing purposes only. It's the only time I add anything to my paint. And even then, sometimes I try to draw without it. But since this is a demo and I want it to have clean lines because it's a demo, we'll go ahead and make the sacrifice of using it. My main complaint is that there's just so many new additives that come on the market, and we don't have a lot of knowledge about the long-term effects of using these additives. And we do know that straight oil paint on canvas will last a very long time. So I just try to err towards what works. And I also try to keep my painting setup as simple as possible. I want to spend the most time putting paint on canvas and the least amount of time derping around with materials. Some people really love materials, and I don't want to diminish that, excuse me, in any way. It's not for me. I want the least amount of fuss before I start painting as possible. Okay, so I have a neutralized, thinned color, and so it's just a little bit thin. And I'm going to start by defining my biggest shape here. Okay. I said diamond, and it could still be diamond, but you could also make an argument of a triangle. But the important thing is that what it is that you are thinking, like your conception of the piece. Be careful not to symmetricize, right? Like this side, at least from my point of view, is shorter than this side, but a lot of times people will make it like a perfect, they'll make this side equal to this side. They have different angles, they have different amounts of, um, and this bottom point is further to the right than this point, right? So even though I'm just drawing a diamond, I'm drawing a diamond as thoughtfully as I possibly can. Now, I do have this sweep of greenery over here that is slightly off. If I continue in my thing, it's going to be slightly off my canvas. So I have to ask myself, I have two options. I can make, this is the main floral part. I can make this smaller so that this can fit in, or I can make it part of my composition that a little bit of this greenery will go away. I'm okay with that because if you look here, this green is a very similar value to the background. So it's not standing out a ton anyways. So I don't feel like I have to really make it a big part of my painting. So I'm okay with this choice. Okay. The other thing that we want to think about is where the vase is cutting through here. So a lot of times people make a beautiful flower painting and then their vase is really wonky. It's like way to one side or the other. So you want to think about where your vase is really cutting through that shape you just made. Um, so I'm seeing it kind of cutting through here, but I'm only going to draw this part of it. And on the other side, it's like cutting through here, right? And again, people tend to symmetricize. They put the vase in the middle, but that's not actually where it is. The point of this is closer to this side. So actually this could be over just a touch more. And I feel like this could go over just a touch. Okay, because I'm seeing that the point is closer to the left side of the vase than the right side of the vase. Whenever you make an adjustment, clean up after yourself. The last thing you want are marks that you didn't intend to have on your canvas. I'm just using a rag, but if you really want to clean it up, you can put a touch of Gamasol on your rag. I'm using the Gamasol today because I want it to be super clear for this demo. It's not something I necessarily use a lot in my private painting practice. Okay. Okay, so we have this big shape. We know where our vase is. And now I'm just going to throw in those lines that we're talking about because even though they're smaller in size, they're really important to the overall composition. So the first line is where the ground plane here is hitting the back plane behind. And then the front plane is hitting, this is a touch higher. And you have to think, do you see how this side is coming up here and then it drops when it's coming? You have to think through your piece. That feels too high. Hmm. But is it too high or is this part of our triangle too low? Remember that whenever you identify a problem, so I was making the point of my triangle this, but since this is going off the page and we decided it's not that important, instead I'm going to make it that back flower. It's just a more useful anchor point. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up. Wait, that's the one I did want. Hold on. Sometimes if you get confused, erase both and redraw the one that you do want. I wanted the top one. I got confused. I got a little curvy. And we'll clean up again. Okay. All right. So now this is starting to settle. We have a relationship of the flowers to the vase. The vase is feeling a little wide. I think it can go in just a touch here. And I'm just marking the bottom of the vase. It has an ellipse, but it's not its time yet. Ellipse is like a next level of the drawing, not the big idea situation. And that's feeling okay. And we kind of have this towel sitting there. So I'm thinking about how this towel relates to the hole. I'm thinking about how it's cutting through the hole. Those of you who may have watched the bark plate class I have on the Da Vinci Initiative YouTube channel, might notice how familiar this feels from that technique. All right, and that's going off here. And then we see just the tiniest bit of the front plane kind of cutting through here. All right, so these are our big ideas. This front plane realistically is going to get cut off when I frame this. This bottom part is not really enough, but sometimes it's helpful to just do it so that you know where it is. You don't want white canvas sticking out from behind your frame because you were lazy and didn't paint all the way to the edge of your painting. And welcome, Carol. Good to see you all the way from New Hampshire. Okay, so all right, so these are our big ideas so far. So now I can start breaking them up a little bit more. And, really, I want to know what this painting is about, right? It's about the flowers, but not all the flowers are equal. And so, I feel like this flower over here is a really important flower because it's kind of this lone wolf. It has a negative space around it. It's going to draw a lot of attention because it's a chromatic note in front of a really dull note. So that's a really important one. This one is both large and chromatic, so it seems pretty important. And really, these chromatic notes, this pink, that one, this one. So I want to anchor those three notes. And you see how I can even triangulate them, that they make their own triangle. So I really want to just get those nailed down, in my piece. So I'm going to add, I just need a touch more Gamma Salt to thin my paint. This is a new palette that I started using because I finally found the really thin ones that I love. So it's absorbing all of the liquid because it's a new palette. So I need to mix up some more drawing color. Okay, so I'm going to work on these anchor bits. So the rose up here kind of extends beyond. And again, I'm using a dark color because this is a demo. I would recommend using something lighter in your own drawing, as light as you can get away with and still see clearly. And then we have this one over here, this kind of lone wolf one, and it's lower. And then we have this. So I'm just thinking of this as a triangle within the whole of my piece. We have this one. Okay, so I've anchored my three mains. I feel like this needs to even go over a touch more. It's way over here. And this one is probably a little lower here. So basically what I'm doing to make these adjustments is I'm thinking if these three were in a triangle, what triangle shape would that be making? Um, and this could be a little higher. Maybe a little too high. Okay, so I have this anchor in. I'm still not satisfied, because this has to have the right relationship to here. I think I think it's more like this. So even though it looks like I'm putting a random mark in the middle page, I'm triangulating it to this, and I'm also asking myself, this is the bottom of my base, this is the top of my arrangement. Where does that rose hit? And it's a little below halfway, so now it's hitting a little bit below halfway. And it's a little far over, so it needs to come over just a touch. So I thought about the height of it, like how high is it within the bottom to the top, but I'm also thinking left to right. And okay, that's feeling pretty good. I feel like this rose could even go just a touch higher. It's really sticking out of that shape up here. Okay. So we have these three main flowers. Now that I've kind of indicated where they are, I'm just going to make a big shape for each of them. So just basically creating an envelope around that shape just to really anchor them into place. And again, my view is a tiny bit different from your view. I do have that picture for you guys now to look at. Okay, and then we have this big rose up here. Okay. All right, so we have our big roses. So big ideas to small ideas. Um, I think now just kind of targeting inner base because I'm relating so much to this space. Like the space is still a touch fat. The nice thing about a vase is unlike the flowers, they're not going to move and grow on you. They're not going to follow the sunlight. They're going to, really just stay put. So whenever we have a solid anchor like that, it's really useful to us. All right. I give lecture after lecture about ellipses in our online atelier painting boot camp. We don't have the luxury to do a whole lecture on it right now, but generally speaking, the further away a circle is from your eye height, my eye height is here. So the further the circle is away from your eye height, the more curvy it becomes. Okay, and we don't really see the top edge because it's just covered with flowers. We do have this ribbon situation going on that maybe we want to address because it's taking up a lot of space. Um, and We have some interruption here, but it's basically continuing. Right. We don't have to get super. Again, this is a study. This is a highly refined painting. This is a one go. What's the word I'm looking for when you paint it all in one go? Alla prima. This is the one go alla prima study for these flowers. Again, because flowers are going to die. And we have one day. They're not going to make it till next Monday. So we're doing a study today. Okay. All right. So we have these. We have, I would say the carnations here are like the second next most important thing. So I'm going to start placing those. Now this rose is actually a little bit bigger. And this carnation, even though it looks like I'm just drawing around a carnation, I'm really thinking, where's this carnation in relation to the left side? Where is it in relation to this? It's really important that you understand the pieces within a whole, because if you just go one after the other without thoughtful placement, what you're going to end up with is a bouquet that's one proportion on one side and grows to a bigger proportion on the other side. It's interesting. This particular carnation is almost as large as the rose. You can make the argument that it's almost the same size. Yeah. My rose needs a little adjusting here. Okay, so these are kind of buddy-buddy. I have a carnation floating up here as well. It's lower than this rose and lower than this ranunculus. I don't know how to say it, that flower. If anybody in the chat knows, let me know. All right. Okay, so we have this. All right, so these are like the big size-wise flowers that we're really seeing. There's, from your point of view, you guys might be seeing a little bit more of one over here, but it's so far in the background that it's background noise at this point. So always ask yourself, what's next? What's next, right? So these are anchors. These are really great for us, controlling and designing the painting. And next, I feel like these sweet peas are really, having a show over here, right? So let's get a few of those in. Uh, oh, I see Ellen has flowers taking over her garden. uh, Yes, so there's some commentary in the chat, like the way the flowers move. Yes, and they're going to keep moving while we're painting even today. So we have to be more open-minded, a little more flexible in how we approach flower painting. Um, need to. This palette's like soaking up all of my Gamasol, so I just need to add a touch more. It really takes a few times of painting on a palette to really break it in because it builds up a patina over time. Okay, so let's deal with a little bit of what's going on over here. We have a little bit of this greenery sweeping here. I didn't mean to paint that quite so bold, but that's all right. We have these, sweeps coming this way, um, like this, um, kind of creating some texture here. I don't like how this is being organized. I don't like how dark this is. I don't like how it's distracting me. So I'm going to take these away for now and I'll think about them later. It's not their time yet. I think instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these sweet peas. So I am going to generally lay down the direction of the branch that the sweet peas are being splayed from. And then, just start marking in our sweet peas. Which, you're thinking how big are they compared to these flowers? And also how big are they compared to the stem? And I'm just marking them in. We're not doing a super refined drawing today because this is a study. So we're just trying to get our big ideas, the big gesture of the thing. I think this could be a little smaller here and that this could actually be a little bit more showy. How's everything related to everything else? All right, so we have some sweet pea situation going on. We have another branch. Sadly, these are already, I must not have put these in the water already. Do you see how these top ones are getting a little wrinkly? Um, oh, so there's a question about the palette. Do you coat your palette first? I did. I put like 2 to 3 layers of oil on a new palette, but it wasn't enough. You can see that it's still soaking in like this bleeding situation here. It's because my palette is still thirsty. So it probably needed a couple more layers before I started using it. Um, yeah, so Ellen, some of the palettes do claim that they're already finished and you don't need it. I know some people that absolutely love the new wave palettes for that reason that they have a coat on them, and that's totally valid. You can do that. I have a confession to make. I'm very abusive to my palettes, and I tend to go through a number a year. And so if you get a finished palette, they cost a lot of money. And because I go through more palettes because I am obnoxious sometimes to my palettes. So oftentimes I'm not thinking about taking care of my palette the way I should because I'm off on another project or something. So I just don't want to invest personally. But if you're really, really good at cleaning up after yourself at the end of every day, then one with a patina on it it might be a good idea. Yeah, they are more expensive. um, Okay, I'm getting some affirmation in the chat that ranunculus is, yes, ranunculus. That's a fun word to say. Flower words are fun to say. Okay, anyways, we have this other one that's about to die, so I either better get it in or ignore it. So it's kind of coming up shorter. And, keep in mind too that all the flowers are going to a vase. Do you see how right now the stem is going in this direction? That's not going into a vase. So eventually it has to be coming into the vase at some point. I think it's actually a little bit more this way. Sometimes these things feel obvious, but when you're painting, you're thinking about so many things that sometimes the obvious escapes our attention. Welcome, another person online. Happy to have you here. Love the name. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and place these here. I had no intention of painting flowers today, but then I got this arrangement over the weekend. I'm like, obviously we're painting flowers today. What else could we possibly do? Sometimes, we think that we're in charge as painters, like, oh, we're going to decide what to paint next. But I find that the universe is always messing with us and telling us more. Paintings go in a certain direction. Oh, here's a very interesting comment in the chat. So I've come to the conclusions that everything in adult life is designed to stop people from drawing or painting. Yes, I agree. I think that drawing and painting realistically really fell out of favor in the, kind of closed circuit, quote unquote, high end art world. And that if you want to draw and paint realistically, that people are like, oh, it's dead. The figure is dead. Why not just take a photo? But yet, as a licensed art teacher, I taught kindergarten through 12th grade. And what my students wanted to know more than anything else was they would have visions in their head and they wanted to get them out on paper or painting the way that they saw them. And that requires skills for them to do that. Ellen's saying that's how it feels when she's learning to paint for sure. For sure. It's, it's anybody can learn how to draw and paint. I'm going to say it again for the back. Anybody can learn how to draw and paint realistically. It's a skill. It's like reading. It's like learning your addition. It's not that some people have a magic talent fairy that bops them on the head and gives them it, and other people do not. What is true is that different people have different access to good information that helps them achieve realism skills. And so that one kid that was in your class that was the artist, I guarantee you he had a parent, a relative, a friend, a private teacher, someone that had more information than he did and taught it to him. There's no such thing as a self-taught artist. Like all those people trying to claim that Picasso was self-taught, he wasn't. His father trained at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris and brought back that training and trained Picasso in a classical style before he went off and did something else with it, right? So there's no such thing as a self-taught artist. It's collective information that some people are better at finding independently than others, but you don't have to waste all your time and energy doing this. You can just go to an atelier and they'll teach you how to draw and paint. For those of you who might not be familiar with what an atelier is, it's these schools that exist largely outside of the university system that teach you how to draw and paint realistically. That's where I got my training, and now I run my own atelier at the School of Atelier Arts. So if you're interested in finally learning how to draw and paint, because anybody can, if it's what your heart always wanted to do, you can do it. You just need to go to an atelier. And right now, you're working with an atelier trained person this very minute. So hopefully that it helps people that feel like they just don't have it. I hope that you feel empowered to go pursue the knowledge. It's there and you can learn it. And welcome, Carlos from Pennsylvania. So happy to have you here. So there's a comment about the carpet wall. Yeah, so some people, I've mentioned this before, but I like this carpet wall. It's really a piece of wood with carpet over it, but it allows me to nail and move things around constantly without having to patch holes in my wall, right? So I just really, really love it. I kept it bare today because I liked this neutral color behind my flowers. But, it's really easy to tack in whatever drapery behind here to change the colors if I want to. Okay, that was a rant. I'm gonna get back to painting now. Okay, so anywho, I'm just putting these marks in because we're not doing a highly tight drawing, we're doing a study. And so soon I want to get the color starting to throw it down on here. And I just need these anchor points and any major color shift, value shift, chroma shift to kind of come through. These sweet peas are mostly important because they're such a light value compared to what's around it. So we want to make sure that we give them the breathing space they need to really shine when we start painting our. So these got too big and they're not far enough over. So they're much smaller here. Sometimes if you get lost in your drawing, it's better to just take it out. But they got too big. Because I think those are still too big. I think they're too big and I didn't start them far enough over. So let's try again. Because they really come over here. That's what the problem is. Now, even though it looks like I'm doing just this little bit, I'm looking at how they relate to this flower, how they relate to this flower. I think this got a little low too. Because there's kind of a straightness in this before it bends. All right, now we're getting somewhere. because there's distance. And so I'm checking the distance from here. I'm checking the distance from here. This rose could probably be a little bit bigger. It looks a little small. Okay. This was the carnation. And all right, this rose is a touch small. Now, sometimes it feels like, oh, I'm so stupid. Put it in the wrong place. Why can't I see better? Don't be talking bad about yourself to yourself, especially when you're painting flowers, because they are living, breathing things. It's possible that you didn't do it right the first time, which, so what? It's paint. You can move it. But it's also possible, because we're painting flowers, that there was some slight adjustment or motion that changed their shape. Okay. More sweet pea. Okay. Um, this one's too far over and too big. And this carnation looks like it needs just a little bit more oomph to it. Okay, I don't want to get too lost in drawing. I just want things generally in the right place. Again, this is going to be more of a study than a finished painting. I'm going to try indicating a few of these stems. There's one that's coming this way and has kind of some greenery thing going on at the end. We have a counterpoint of a big sweep cutting through this rose. Remember that all these plants have to fit in the vase. So I'm thinking in the vase before I ever curve them out. I rarely draw a straight curve. I like to find where the breaks in the curves are. This stem is important because it's holding up this. Although you don't have to paint every stem. Do you see, we'll get to this when we're painting, but the green of this stem is very close in value to the background. It's more chromatic, but I love sometimes having a ghost flower, just especially when they're far out and not actually attaching it with the stem in. It gives like a really ethereal effect with what it is. Okay. And welcome, Lisa from Spokane. Good to have you here. Welcome, welcome. All right. So again, we're working on our study. We're just filling in a little bit more before we go to color. And thanks to those of you helping each other out in the chat with questions. I love a good learning environment. I want all of us to walk away today feeling like we know a little more than where we started. All right, so I did have a daffodil up here, and it barely looks like a daffodil anymore. It's so sad looking. I'm trying to decide. Maybe I'll put it in because it's an important note. It fills out the canopy here, but I might make it look a little better than it looks in real life. The advantage of a study, right? um, it's actually sticking up beyond here. Let me try again. Okay. So for those of you who've been following me for a while, every Monday, I fell off the wagon briefly, but I'm back. Every Monday at 9 a.m., I try to give a live demo. I'm always trying to balance, providing the best education I can to the world because I am trying to bring technical drawing and painting knowledge to the average person here, and to anybody who wants it. Right? This is just as accessible as learning how to read is. It's just that as far as how hard it is to learn it, it's just that the information isn't as easily accessible as, reading teachers are to us. Um, Ellen's like, if you need to take longer, we could stay longer. I mean, it already is 9:48. I'm just going to power through this as a study here, but we'll take a short break between when we finish the drawing and when we start painting. Um, okay, there's a little yellow situation back here. That's a nice color note. We have something going on up here. And again, things have to go in the vase. This curve is not going to allow it to go in the vase. And it's even further over than I thought. Okay, I don't have to get every single thing in, just the anchors. There's kind of some fluff going on here. This, I think this is too big here. Some kind of pink tufts going on. There's a little tufting going on over here. And some at the top here. All right. I'm being lazy. I really need to make more paint, and I'm not because I'm almost done. All right. I think this is enough information where we can really go into the color. And what we're going to be doing with the color is laying in all the big notes. We'll lay in a background note, the ground plane note. We'll find, kind of this green note behind our flowers, and then we will start describing the flowers within that. I want to take a quick 2-3 minute break here so we can transition to the next part of the painting. I just need to reset my setup here. um, okay. All right. So let's take a quick 2-minute break here and then we will be back shortly. Get your coffee. Okay, back from our little I see I'm not the only one that's getting more coffee here. So before we jump back into the painting, I just want to talk about a couple things. One is that your eyes get very tired as you're painting. So I was painting for an hour straight with no breaks. You need to look at other things. You need to give your eyes breaks because that's what helps you see more accurately over time. And so the other thing I want to talk to you about is we're going to start mixing colors. The intent of this demo is just to show you how to make a painting study. And so I'm not going to go super in depth in the color mixing today. If you check out the School of Atelier Arts YouTube channel, we have lots of videos on color theory, mixing value, chroma, hue that start from the very, very beginning and take you to a pretty sophisticated level. So if you want to know more about color mixing, please check those out. Also, of course, I run an online program this called Atelier Painting Bootcamp. So for $500 a month, you can get training directly from me twice a week where I coach you through things and give special demos and special lessons. So I hope you'll consider joining us there. We have a great group. It's a lot of fun. Okay, we have more coffee. Mm. Okay, and onwards to the painting situation here. So, all right, let me make sure that you guys, my coffee's in the way. All right, I try to get you guys close, but also not annoy myself with how close you guys are because I need to have room in my hand to paint, in my arm rather. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work big ideas to small with color, just the same way I did with drawing. So I'm going to paint the background first because it's the biggest area. And also all this white canvas is going to skew our color. So the more of the canvas we can get covered quickly, the easier it's going to be to get the correct color notes elsewhere. All right, so this gray is pretty neutral. So I'm going to mix a yellow, a red, and a blue to get a neutral color. And it's gray, so it has some lightness in it. Now, you may have noticed that I put black in there. Black is actually a very dark blue. At least the ivory black is a very dark blue. But this gray is not a warm gray. Well, it truly is a very neutral gray. It's a pretty good neutral gray. So mixing some white in. I'm using lead white today, which is less intense than the titanium white. So you're going to need a lot more of it to change the value. Different pigments have different qualities to them. All right. This is feeling a little purpley. So the opposite of purple on the color wheel is yellow. I'm adding in a little bit of yellow. This is too dark. I'm going to stick it to the side. And add more white. That way I don't have to add a ton of white to it. So two things. You want to mix up enough paint to cover the area that you need. We have a fairly large area as well here. I'm going to put a little more blue. I used black before. Oh, see, this is too potent. Look at how it turned everything blue. We're back to purple and need some more yellow to balance out. And a touch of red. All right, so this turned out more yellowy. This other one was too purpley. So I'm going to take a little bit of my purple and a little bit of my yellow and hope that I can get closer to what I'm going for. And this time I'm going to use black instead of the blue because it's more neutral to get closer to my gray. And then I'm going to add some more white and see if we get closer this time. Still feeling a touch warm. I'm going to be more judicious and add just a tiny bit of blue this time instead of too much blue like I did last time. Neutrals are some of the hardest to mix. You can see I'm on my 5th attempt of this, right? Part of it is that I've been painting with titanium white for the last few months, and there's a little bit of a learning curve when you switch whites about how they behave. So I'm still bringing in colors as if we were painting with titanium instead of lead. You have to be much more nuanced, adding color to. All right, that's still way too warm. That's closer. It looks really cold on my palette, but it actually looks warm on the canvas here. But it's too dark. Never be sad about having extra neutrals on your palette. It's a really nice cheater way to neutralize colors later on when you need it. See, this is the color I wanted. It looked way too blue on my palette to me, but yet when I throw it down, this is exactly the color that I wanted. Crazy. Our eyes can play tricks on us. All right, I'm going to get a larger brush because we have a lot of area to cover and I'm trying to do this quickly as a study. So always adjust your proportion of your brush to the area that you're trying to paint. Okay. Right, this brush might be too big and it had a little bit of green in it and just skewed all my hard work here. I didn't clean my brush very well. Do you see how it's throwing in all this green in here? I need to really wipe down this brush. Those of you who've been painting with me for a while know how much I hate painting with or hate washing brushes. So I tend to use a technique where I just leave them in oil and just never wash them. But sometimes I do a better job than others of wiping them down before I put them in the oil. So there's a great question in the chat. Lisa's asking what size brush and what size is my canvas. My canvas is an 8x10. My brush, I think, is this brush that I'm using right now is an 18. It's probably a little too big, but I'd rather be too big than too small on a study because having a big brush forces you to make big idea decisions because you have a big brush in your hands. Ella says she thinks of me when she cleans her brushes now. Well, if you ever want to, just be a professional brush cleaner for me, let me know. That's funny. All right. Okay. So it's a touch green. I'm bringing in some blue. There we go. Could probably go a little lighter. Now, sometimes in my online class, I spend a lot of time talking about how backgrounds have gradients, but in this case, we're getting a pretty consistent color all the way across. So I'm not going to worry too much about the gradient, especially because if there is one, it's so subtle and it's not the main point of this study. It's a thing to do in a finished painting, not a study. Okay, it's still a touch on the green side. It's still a touch too dark. Okay. I'm okay with like the background, it's still just a touch green, and it's a touch dark. Now, you're trying to match as closely as you can what you see before you. So I don't want to say, oh, cheat, it doesn't matter. But also, we're on a timeline, ticky, ticky, tock. These flowers are dying as we speak, they're moving as we speak. So sometimes, in a study in particular, like if you get close, just get it covered, right? Because you'll learn a lot more. Like I'll have to come back and adjust this. It's still too green. It's driving me crazy. I might have to do this thing where, because I'm painting with lead white and it's so impotent, if I scrape off what's under it and then paint on top of it, that's probably the better choice. There we go. There we go. That feels much better. Keep in mind that there's always subtle changes between, I'm painting with pigment, then it's going through my camera onto the internet, and then you're picking it up from the internet, and then it's going through, your screen. So there's always a little bit of fussiness when you're going from one to the other. So just be mindful of that. Some mistrans. It's like a game of telephone, except with color. Oh, so there's a request to enlarge the view of the still life. Let me try it because I'm new to this technology. Apologies. So I can make it really big. Like I can make it this size. Maybe I can, but I don't know how to make it. I have two sizes, the small and the big. So maybe what I can do for today is show the big one every now and then so you can really see it. And then for the next stream, I'll learn more and figure out how to make it like a medium and in the bottom right hand corner. So I'm just not sure how to do that yet with this technology. Yeah. Um, Yeah, that's the thing. I thought that, oh, I'm a painter. I'm going to mix dirt with oil and smear it on woven linen for a living. But being a painter, in this moment, in this time, is really a lot of technology knowledge. I'm learning just as much about technology as I have about painting. That's feeling closer to me. Okay, so get it covered. That's the name of the game. This is a study. This isn't perfection, but we got to get it covered. You'll see that I'm overpainting my drawing a little bit. I'm just trying to have no white canvas. So I can always, bring the flowers out over the background. But what I don't want is for there to be white spots in my canvas once I'm, getting through my first pass. Um, there's some sort of fluff up here, some greenery. We'll add that in later. This brush is absurdly large, but I'm kind of digging it today. You'll find sometimes as a painter, you'll go through phases, and right now, all my old systems are starting to shift under me a touch. Like in the online class, I've started teaching scumbling, which is not a technique I often used previously. And now using this giant brush, like I'm really kind of enjoying it. Normally I wouldn't go quite this big, but I feel like there's a lot of opportunity here. I'm curious to see how the study goes with this brush. We can always redraw that line. It's not that important. I think this got too far over. It needs to get my drawing brush here. Um, whether I drew it in the wrong place or it moved, it's over here a little bit more directly above this carnation. We'll get to some of that later. This is lower. Ugh, that green is still in my brush. All right, I think I'm learning my lesson about washing my brushes. And there's going to be a lot of greenery that gets painted in here, but the greenery is a similar value to the background. So it's going to be a lot of soft edges with maybe a few that I pull out to accentuate. Now it does get darker in here because the vase is casting a shadow. There's going to be some dark greens in here too at some point. Okay. That's fine. Okay. Kind of cleaning this up. All right. It's always funny when you get the background in how your whole thing feels so much smaller, right? But as we start painting in what's in here, it'll start growing bigger again. So it's something to think about. A lot of times my students, they're like, oh, this is too small. I need to redraw the whole thing. It needs to be bigger. But it's really just an illusion at this stage, right? Because we still have a lot of white canvas. We just painted this big area in. But as we start picking these out, you'll see how they pop back to life and start growing again. All right, I'm going to do this ground plane here. It's kind of a warm white. It has the shadow being cast, blah, blah. All right, I need to get more white on my palette because this is too yellow. And my white's all polluted right now. So stick that to the side and get some more. So we're actually closer than you might realize at finishing this painting. We've done a lot of the hard work. Now we are just kind of painting by number. Like we did the drawing. We're going to do some thinking about color. But again, this is a study, not a refined painting. So we're not going to do a really detailed final pass on this. And we're going to kind of get the study just all in there. There's a question in the chat. What part of the world am I painting from? I'm in the New York City area. Not quite in the city, but close enough that I get to go hang out there. Illinois is nice. I grew up in Ohio, so I have an affinity for my Midwestern peers there. The thing I love about New York is just being so close to amazing art that you can go see, you know? Although there's actually quite a bit of great art in the Midwest museums because the Midwest had all that car money from manufacturing in the 40s and, well, really before then too, so that when a lot of old master collectors were in trouble after World War I and World War II, the Americans really took advantage and bought a lot of the artwork. And so, like the Detroit Art Institute, the Dayton Art Institute, there's a lot of great art museums out there that have really impressive collections for being in such a relatively small city. Okay. Don't want to get too caught up on details, but do need to define a little bit of what's going on this edge. I don't want to really get into it. This edge. Um, all right. So it's not quite a pure white. It gets brighter on the front. So the front can't be bright if I use my brightest on the top, right? So it's bright and then it has a highlight and then it gets slightly shaded. I'm going to exaggerate the shading. The piano has an angle to it, but I'm going to pretend that it's just a straight down so that there's more contrast here. And again, this part's probably going to be covered by the frame eventually, but all right, it's looking a little wonky in a few places. I don't want to spend forever on it, but I want it to read clean. Be careful when you ever make a horizontal along a ground plane change because it can really, like, it feels unnatural. Try to break it up. Do you see how I'm drawing it, but then breaking it up a little bit? Um, okay. Now I'm just like really going to start going into it. We have this kind of orange note on the rag. I'm not painting every little stripe, but it is dark in the background. I'm just trying to get my canvas covered. You can adjust later, get as close as you can to what you need. I'm implying the stripe, but I'm not really painting it. That's not for a study. I am going to clean up the edge a touch. Um, so there's like a shadow under here. The vase is casting a shadow. And then, of course, we have this green ribbon. Fairly dark. That's is that too dark? Maybe. I mean, the ribbon has a little plaid on it, but if you average it all together, it has a specific color, and it's a little bit more of a bluey green. That was too much. All right, we're gonna go with something like that. All right, this base is very dark in here too. So while I have darks on my brush, be mindful of your lips. I'm gonna have to go back and clean that up. We really want these contrasting notes, and it teaches you like, oh, this ribbon could go darker here. This is way too light up here. We can get back into some of this, but I want to get it covered. You don't want to get stuck. Um, there's a line in Pride and Prejudice where Lady Catherine de Bourgh is accusing this Elizabeth of tricking her nephew into marrying her, and like, you may have drawn him in, right? This phrase, but you don't want to get drawn in. You don't want to be captured here. Like, this color may have drawn me in. Like, I don't want to get stuck. And again, I'm also painting super with this giant brush. I may switch brushes, but I feel like it's helping me keep in study mode. All right. And, we have our background in and we have some really dark darks, and there's a few opportunities for dark greens while I have it on my brush and a few other places. Up here, there's some darkness, um, kind of up in here. Underneath here, it's these darks that make the flowers look bright. Like, if you're painting and your flowers look chalky and not very brilliant, they look like cartoon flowers, it's probably not that you painted the flower wrong. More often than not, it's that you didn't give it enough contrast with what's behind it. There's definitely some darks over here. These are some of those leaves that are kind of, we can fade into the background, we can define. These eucalyptus are super bluey green. I'm just painting them as a color note. I'm not even worried about their exact shape right now. They're just kind of fluffy little colors in there. And there are two leaves that are a little bit more defined back here. And you don't want this white on your canvas, so I'm taking some time to just make sure that it's all covered. All right, we can definitely deal more with that as needed. We did allow this to kind of go off the page in this direction. Um, I've been ignoring the chat for a minute. Um, oh, so we're talking about the museums. Yeah, the Chicago Arts Institute, that's another great one. Um, oh, so Lisa's asking me, how am I getting this on the board? I actually just roll tape on the back side of these panels and tape them. I used to tape them around the edges, but then you have this white around your edge at the finished painting, which I didn't like. And I've occasionally had them fall off if it's like a really rainy day and the air has a lot of moisture in it. Sometimes they'll fall off, but for the most part, like I prefer taping them up this way. Okay. Um, Sorry, there's some spam in the chat. Oh, I banned Lisa. Oh no. Lisa, if you're listening, which I hope you are, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I was trying to ban the spammer. Um, um, oh my goodness, Lisa, I'm so sorry. And she can't tell me she can hear me because I accidentally banned her. I will fix this. Let's see here. Um, I'm so sorry, Lisa. I'm gonna have to do that a different way. I'm so sorry. Mandy and technology is not so good. Okay, we'll continue painting. I'm so sorry, Lisa. It looks like you're still in here, and I will figure out how to fix this after the demo. Um, Technology is not what I'm good at. Oh, okay. We also have some of this darkness. And it's very bluey green over here. There we go. All right, so we kind of edged in some of our darks. All right, I think we're ready to throw in some of our main color notes here, and then we can really start cleaning everything up. So, there's always an awkward teenager phase of every painting, and it's so hard to not get students to or to convince students not to panic. But we'll get that settled. There's a question about what paints that I use. So I actually have a list of all the paints. Let me throw it up here. I just wrote this article so that everybody could have it. This is my materials list of what I use in my painting. So if you go to schoolofatelier.com/oil-paint-materials-list, you can find the whole list and it has links to everything there. You can also find it by just going to schoolofatelierarts.com and then in the search bar, type in materials list and it'll come up that way. Okay. All right, so my palette is very covered in greens and neutrals, and I want to clean it up because I need some really clean notes. And I'm probably going to also get a clean brush because when you're painting with chroma, you want clean chroma notes. Ah. All right, I'm going to get a different brush. Okay. All right, so I'm going to mix up just some of these pinks. So I'm using my red and my white. And these are slightly soft pinks and slightly orange pinks. So I'm going to add just a touch of my yellow ochre in here. And I need a lighter version. So get some of the white in here. All right, so I'm seeing the lighter kind of around here. This is a little bit orangier. I'm going to make one with a colder. So I'm going to use alizarin to make the pink instead. That'll give me a slightly colder. There we go. And then we have this pretty chromatic note in here. People miss out on the chromas in florals, and they also tend not to see the darkness that's in some of the florals. So there's on this underside here, it's quite dark. That was a little exaggerated. I'm going to neutralize it slightly and lighten it slightly. You know, there's definitely darkness in roses and chroma in roses, and it's more intense than you might think because the petals are slightly transparent and they're bouncing light between them. And it gets quite dark down here. Okay, I'm trying not to draw every little petal right now, but I am just trying to get the shape in. And you'll see that it's growing again, right? So everything looks really small before, and now we are growing again. I'm going to shape these darks just a little bit. I don't want to get sucked into a drawing, but I don't want it to feel like a polka dot either. I want it to feel like the shape of a rose. This backside has a little shadow in here. Okay. All right, one rose. That's as far as we're going to take it. This is just a study, all right? We're not going hardcore. Oh, okay, Lisa, I'm so sorry. I hope this is the same Lisa in a different count. So this is a size 2 brush that I switched to. Okay. So we'll go on to this one. So it looks yellow, but it's a very greeny yellow. And again, with the chroma, you know, you can always, doesn't this seem crazy? Like I'm painting a white carnation with this like insane yellowy color, but it really is intense and more bright than we tend to want to paint. flowers. For a flower, just like anything else, you need the darks and lights to make it feel whole. And flowers have this translucency and chroma on top of that. Right now, there's a really cold note here, and so I need some really pure white to really throw that down. And I'm gonna go for the shape just a little bit more here. And I feel like, this carnation can really go darker. It definitely has some dark shadows in it. I'm already tempted to come back tomorrow and do a second pass on this just because I can see how we could take it up a notch. And, now that I got my carnation dark, I feel like we can push this rose down in value just a touch more. And I really want this light to pop. Why isn't it popping? Well, part of it is that this edge over here is too light. So look what happens as soon as I start um, darkening around this. You see what a difference that makes? Like just getting the darks as dark as they need around something. And on this face too, there's certainly room to go dark. You know what? And this is all in shadow. We don't have to define all of this. I'd started out by, but I can just let that be a soft edge back there. I do want to define the edge of my jar just because it gives us some stability in the painting. And then I'm going to crisp up this edge over here as well, just because it's standing out so much. There's just so much dark back here. All right, and guess what? We can take this even more. There's going to be some green highlights in here, but it's not their time. Let's get our big flowers in first. Get our values set. as I push down the value of the base, some of these other areas of shadow can go. Just defining the ribbon a little cleaner. Sometimes edges will do work for us that we then no longer have to paint, you know, like the ribbon's being defined more by the edge than by painting it. Do, 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 do. So there's a great point in the chat. So Ellen's saying that the small photo really shows the lights and darks more easily. Absolutely, that's definitely true. And that's what squinting your eyes is supposed to do too, is really just popping the lights and darks. And we of course want to make sure that we're achieving that in our painting as well. I'm just going to throw the big one on again, just so you guys can see it again. And welcome, Linda. Good to have you here. So here's the large photo again as well, just so that you guys can reference that. And again, I'll work on figuring out how to put it bigger than what I have it, but I don't know yet how to do that. Okay, so contrast, right? Look at this beautiful contrast we have going on here. And look how much more beautiful this is because we darken what's next to it. Sometimes students are tackling the wrong problem. Sometimes the problem isn't that your flower isn't bright enough. Sometimes the problem is what's around it isn't dark enough. I do want to just clean up some of this. All right. This doesn't have to be super defined right now. Like, let's get our flowers in, and then we can determine how defined we want the rest of it. Okay, while we're working in the yellows here, we have another carnation, also playing with the cold whites and the warm whites. So I'm going to throw the cold whites on first this time, just because that warm polluted so much. All right, and again, this isn't going to show up because we don't have the darks in here. So I'm going to switch to my darks. Because we definitely have, the greens are a little bit more yellowy up here. And this needs some color. I'm just kind of putting it in for reference. And really, we have this yellow one here that really needs laid in as well. And of course, our big one over here. We also have some lighter greens coming in, but I'm going to save those like for a different pass. I want to get these big notes in as much as possible. But while I have this color on my brush, I'm seeing some more. Oh, look how this carnation is going to start popping on this side. Uh, there's definitely some color notes here. Okay. All right, I'm going to try to focus on this one. We have a little bit of a leaf coming out. Up here. And we have some yellowy green on this side. All right, see, we almost have it just by painting what's around it. All right, we have a yellowy green intense color on the shadow side. This looks crazy, right? Maybe that's a little too greeny, but the chroma in a white is way more than most students anticipate that it is, especially in flowers. Okay. I need some warm whites. I need a clean napkin. I really need to put fresh white on my palette. It's starting to get muddy. And then, like, you're just making your whole life harder than it needs to be. All right, so there's definitely some darkness in here. And this is so hard for students to see what we call a chromatic dark, right? So it's a very dark green, but it's still a green in here. All right. I went a little too dark, so now I'm going to restate my lights. So it's a little bit of push and pull. Sometimes we lose the structure. Like this just looks like polka dots right now. I'm going to reunify just the light shape and the shadow shape. So this light shape isn't just one strip, it's a shape. And this has a shape that's very specific. And this light here. No, we also have some edges. You know, sometimes those are more of a finishing pass thing or something to do at the end. And I'm going to unify these darks a little bit into one shape. This white shape got too big for its bridges. This really has a glowy yellow in it right here. And also up here. my paint's getting pretty thick. I think I'm gonna leave this one alone for now. It's not my favorite, but sometimes by painting around something, it gives you clues to what you need to do to fix something that's not quite working the way you want it to. It's not terrible. It's not as clean as this one. All right, but all right, my palette's a complete mess. I want you to look at this, right? My white's all filthy. I have nowhere to mix colors. Of course, everything is going to get dirty. So I'm going to take a 2-minute break here and clean up the palette. And then when we come back, we'll, just keep picking away at these roses. Okay. All right. So I'm like, oh, we're going to do this whole study in one day. And I can tell my eyes are getting tired. I might have to break it up into 2 days, but I'm going to attempt to honestly, I can do it, right? We don't have that much space left, and we'll have a really beautiful study by the time that we finish this. But it is challenging, right? Like you need to take breaks. You need to think about what you're doing, organize your thoughts. And really, I think for this flower, I'm gonna have to dig out my quinacridone. We'll have to see, but it's quite intensely colored. This one too. But we'll try it and find out. All right, so I think my plan of action is I'm gonna paint this rose and this ranunculus, that's the way it's pronounced. And then we'll evaluate what needs to happen next. All right. And people see a flower arrangement like this and they're like, "Oh, it's so light and fluffy." And they forget that there's all these darks in there and how dark the darks really are and how that is really the key to making the rest of the painting feel bright. All right, here we go. Oh, that's actually pretty chromatic. I might do. No, because these roses are pastels, we might be able to get away without the quinacrinones today. There's still darkness, of course, in, that's a mistake that I see students make a lot too, is that they don't find the shadows in the flowers. And there's quite a value difference between the lightest part of your flower and the darkest part of your flower. I'm getting more into drawing in this one than I did in the other one, and I want to be careful not to take one further ahead than the other. Remember that there's still groupings of light and shadow, even in a flower, even though it's disrupted a whole bunch of times by all the different petals. There's still a clear light and shadow situation. And I'm getting caught up in like detail drawing, and that's not what the study is about. So I'm going to let it go for now. And again, sometimes you struggle with something because what's around it isn't super defined. Like maybe part of the reason I'm struggling with the chroma right now is because there's some dark leaves behind that I haven't painted up here. That can help define the shape of the rose underneath here as well. So you see what a difference just having a little bit of contrast can do for your drawing. We also have a cast shadow on the wall back here, so this is actually much darker in the background around here, which should help our poor rose as well, and our sweet peas. It helps a ton. Yeah, flowers, it's much just about painting what's supporting the flowers. What's the base creating the contrast to showcase your flowers? And we have some light green situation going on up this way. Hmm. All right. Just soften that situation. Put a little more brown in there. I want this to feel like the background. And then we can define this one leaf a little more cleanly. All right, so I'm just filling in some of the greenery areas. Just a little bit of bright here. There's definitely more of a brightness here. Now, I'm still debating whether I want to define the stems so much or let them kind of float up, but either way, implying some of this lighter green area is helpful, especially we have one. There's quite a bit of a contrast up here. If you do paint a stem, don't paint the whole freaking stem. You can break it. Our eye is going to complete the stem whether we paint the whole thing or not. There's actually some light blue in here and down here. I don't know. I might have liked that better not messed with. We'll see. We're getting there. We are getting there. We have kind of a funky little, what used to be one of those spring flowers, not not a daisy. What's this one called? Not a tulip, daffodil. What was a daffodil that's looking a little sad, but we can imply it without, you know, having to really define it. We do, however, need the dark stem or it won't read, right? You see what a difference it makes? Um, okay, let's do this one. This is kind of our back straggler, and these are really important too. Do I want to do this one first? Let's do this one first. So just a little bit of green flowing through them, and they, of course, have shadows because flowers have shadows. That's what's going to help define them. And also this green behind them is going to help us. Actually really liking that. We do have a little bit of a floral leaf back here. This is feeling very Van Gogh, and I'm here for it. Like, I like the look of it, so I'm just going to leave it be. Might as well do these while we're at it. They have a slightly different color because they're drying up a touch on me. Now there's actually one little pink rose kind of hidden back here. And it's going to create the contrast that we really need because it's dark, for the sweet pea to really shine through it. I mean, it's not crazy dark, but do you see how it's just enough? And it's kind of hidden back here. It has some orange in it, especially at the top here. It has one little leaf down here. And I'm also going to help define it again with the darks, right? There's some really nice. It does get quite dark back here, and it has some darkness here. And this color kind of seeps down under here as well. There's definitely some of this darkness down in between here, between that's really giving us some of our definition of these flowers. And then there's the light green stem on top. Remember that the flowers are attached often with something that's slightly darker. It's getting a little sloppy. I liked it better before. I'm going to ignore the stems and just let my pea blossoms be. Except for on this last one, I think it needs the dark. But maybe the secret on this last one is just bringing in the background a touch. That shadow back here does extend. There we go. I like that more. Remember that we're not robots. We're not trying to copy everything. Like, we're trying to be accurate, but we're trying to give the impression, especially in a study, we're trying to give people the impression that we see when we look at something. So I see in the chat, yes, painting around the flowers is such a good lesson, and one that once you learn it, you only have to learn it once, and it'll improve your painting the rest of your life. But that's kind of what atelier training just generally is, right? It's a collection of information that you can learn that improves your painting. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already known. You just need to find somebody that can share with you. Okay, I love this. I'm so happy with that. And because I'm on a roll, I'm going to do these. When I made this bouquet, I was thinking about how much I love these like fluffy little flowers. And I feel like this little study is showing the fluffiness of the flowers in a way that I really like. All right, so we have one down here. We have a big one up here. So I'm basically blocking them in first, then I'm going to paint around them, and then I'm going to paint the flower itself. And I have to paint really thickly with this white because it's lead white, and the lead white is slightly transparent. Okay, so these don't look like much, but why? Because we don't have the background in. We have another like little rose sticking out back here. It's a little orangier. No, I don't really need to define it. It's so far in the back, but just having the color note there is nice. This background is much darker, just like above, because the flowers are casting a shadow. That was probably too dark. I, I was too exaggerated there. Just get things covered is sometimes the most important thing that you can do. Um, there's also kind of these fluffy light pink things. I'm getting distracted, right? I said I was going to work on one area. um, Getting drawn into these fluffy things. Yeah, I love painting with thick paint too. It's good for a study. It's not good if this is an underpainting and you're trying to paint on top of it. You need to save the thick paint for later. But if it's a one-off study, a one and done study, then you got to go for it. It's the only way to build up a light in a type of painting where you're doing it alla prima. Well, not the only way, but the most commonly used way. How about that? Okay, so I got distracted. We'll come back to that. There's just a lot going on in the interior here. I say that, but I'm like, okay, let's just get these other fluffy bits in while I have this on my mind. Nope, that's way too orange. I don't know what I was thinking there. I'm purposely diminishing some of this orange fluff because I don't want it to take away from the carnation up here. And already it's starting to. I'm gonna reset my darks a touch. We have a nice big white flower there and another one here, but I want to really define this. This is the part of the painting where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna work over here, and then beep, 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 you can get sucked in. But as long as you know where you are. The problem with jumping around in a painting is sometimes you forget where you are in the painting, and then you get lost and you can start being in a world of hurt. But as long as you can keep track of where you are, then you'll be okay. I'm exaggerating the dark by this rose because I want this rose to read nicely. All right, we're close to getting it covered. I'm making a couple little exaggerations just for clarity of the painting. All right, I gotta get this in even before I do this because it's just such a back straggler. It just needs to get done. It's hanging out there on its own. It's slightly intimidating. Remember that all things have shadows if they have light. So you gotta account for that in your painting. We have this nice peach. I painted this a little bit on the orange side. It definitely has more pink in it. And again, this background is just a little bit light. Before I thought I was too dark in my background, but like it's definitely look what happens when I start darkening this background. Use a little more blue in here. I'm gonna go back to my big brush to smooth out my background, but look how this dark is gonna help me. And then we can have some soft edge down here. But really, just darkening the side a little bit is gonna help me so much. Okay, this can be a little bit bigger, and I accidentally blotted out our little yellow thing that was going on here, or maybe I didn't paint it, I'm not sure which. Oh, again, using my darks when I need them. It's a little bit of a playful situation here. Again, exaggerating the dark, especially inside the bouquet, um, to get some of the effects I'm looking for. And of course, when you darken one area, you see opportunities to darken others, right? Like this can be darker in here. I want to really anchor some of these darks. Okay, don't get sucked in, Manny. Don't get sucked in. This is not quite big enough and it's not quite bright enough. So a 2-for-1 situation where we can fix both. Um, we do have some skinny shadows in here. Um, I'm implying them. And yeah, and I'm not going to attach the stem. I like it just floating out there a little bit. It got a little big now. Before it was too small. Now it's too big. And I feel like this carnation that we weren't quite happy with before has some room to expand. Just want to give this some more breathing room here. Okay. All right, I want to address this over here. Because we have some of this dark. Definitely have some dark here. And sweet peas have shadows because flowers have shadows. Okay. All right. I'm going to call it this. I intended it to be a 1 hour study, and we're almost 3 hours in, but um, I'm going to call it there. I'm going to pull you in nice and close so that you can see our final painting here. So there's our original and our final. Thank you so much for spending the morning with me. It's always lovely hanging out with fellow art lovers. If you're interested in learning more about painting, if you want feedback on your paintings, consider joining our online boot camp. It's $500 a month. You get access to me twice a week where I look at your art, I coach you through it, I show you what you need to do to adjust it and make it better. And I think you belong there. So I hope to see you in the painting boot camp. If you want to learn how to draw and paint, that's what you need. So it's great to watch, and I hope that you learn a lot watching, but you really need that feedback. That feedback loop is what helps you grow as a painter. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming, and happy Monday to all of you, and have a pleasant rest of your week.